Our first session today is an interview with the creators of the documentary 2.5% The Osa Peninsula. Eytan Elterman and Marco Bollinger, founders of Lokal Travel, set out to record the stories of locals living in the thriving rainforest of the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica. They had no idea that they would wind up creating an award-winning documentary that chronicles the community's relationship with tourism. Now, Eytan and Marco are going to share that incredible story with us of making the film. If you haven't had a chance to watch the film 2.5% The Osa Peninsula, we have a link on our summit schedule website. And if you click that link, you can watch it for free on their website. Eytan Elterman and Marco Bollinger are both founders of the Lokal Travel website as well as the I Travel media company. Eytan is an entrepreneur and a filmmaker, and his work has taken him through Central America, South America, Europe, and parts of Africa. It's those experiences that make him realize what a privilege it is to see the world, and it's this type of adventure that drives his work. He earned an MBA from the Monterey Institute of International Studies, and he has plans to continue his work with Lokal Travel. Marco is the director and photographer for the documentary film 2.5% The Osa Peninsula. He is currently directing his second documentary, Safe Zone, about Syrian refugee children in Lebanon, and he has lived in Tokyo, New York City, Los Angeles, Italy, Costa Rica, and Peru. He works with organizations including UNICEF, the New York City-based Robin Hood Foundation, the Community Coalition in Los Angeles, and he is the co-founder of I Travel Media and Lokal Travel.
Let's get started. All right. Thank you, Eytan and Marco, for being here. I'm so excited to have you share about your documentary and a little bit more about this website that you guys have released recently. My first question is, was this the first documentary project that you've worked on?
This was the first documentary project of this scope that we worked on, of this magnitude and this length. My background personally is in filmmaking and documentary filmmaking and long-form journalism. So prior to working on 2.5, I did a lot of short-form videos around social and environmental, like contemporary content, a lot of advocacy work. And, really short films, 10 minutes. Marco over here came from a, commercial photography background and was getting into filmmaking. And when we decided to make this project, it really was our first documentary of this scope and this magnitude. So
Wow.
In that respect, we're first-time filmmakers in that respect. Yeah.
Wow, it was so professionally done, and you did such a great job weaving stories in and bringing this all together. I was really impressed, and I was curious to see what kind of experience you had. So, congratulations.
Well, we definitely, I'd say we were experienced in storytelling, and I think you can see that the film, looks really good because we had skill set on that. I'd been doing commercial photography for 13 years, so we definitely brought elements to it, but anybody who's made a documentary of this length, or even making one that's 15 minutes, has a lot of trials and tribulations. It's a story unto itself. The process of making it. So a lot of that was learned on the job.
Yes. Wow. Great. What inspired you to take it on from the beginning?
Yeah. Marco and I were running a small boutique media agency focused on travel marketing, specifically sustainable travel marketing. And we were looking for an in-house passion project to accompany a lot of the client work that we were doing. So really we were researching and reading articles and kind of, on the pulse of what was happening within the sustainable travel industry and sustainable travel movement. We came across a publication released by the Center for Responsible Travel, CREST, about the impending development of an airport in the Osa Peninsula and the potential ramifications to this, incredibly biodiverse region. So we decided that we were going to go down for a couple weeks and produce a short documentary. Was our initial thought process, around 10-15 minutes. And so we went down to the Osa, spent about 2.5 weeks there. And what we realized was that kind of the depths and magnitude of kind of the issues and the characters that we came across and the potential for telling a much deeper story was there, and we needed more time. So what that first, trip became was a trailer. We cut a 4-minute trailer, came back to California, and crowdfunded for a longer project and a longer film. And so that was kind of the process behind it.
Yeah, I think this is where some of the naivete of being first-time filmmakers, comes into play. I don't think we understood what we were getting ourselves into in stepping into a larger project. And certainly that started with the crowdfunding campaign. Crowdfunding at the time was still pretty new. We did our best job of studying what would be effective. And after getting stuck around, halfway to our 30K goal, we decided to do a media stunt where we live streamed ourselves on the internet back when Justin TV was still in beta form, dressed up as rainforest animals, head to toe in these like horrid, hot polyester, mascot costumes, and said we weren't going to stop dancing until we were funded. Wow. We honestly thought it wouldn't take longer than 48 hours, and we felt like we could handle that. We had seen a couple other campaigns do that, but it ended up taking 107 hours.
Oh my gosh.
4.5 days in a room.
Whoa.
I mean, we smelled terrible. It was, and I think we both ended up with some mild form of PTSD or something. It took us months to get right.
I think it took us a year to get over that.
Whoa.
I'm still to this day traumatized about crowdfunding campaigns. I mean,
but it really, it really elevated our project to a whole nother level in terms of the exposure that we were able to garner through that crowdfunding campaign. We were interviewed on the Costa Rican nightly news, national TV, in our full body turtle and scarlet macaw outfits.
One of the most embarrassing interviews of my life. Quite frankly, I was like completely out of it. I'm like yelling into the microphone in Spanish.
But it allowed us to produce what we wanted to produce, and it really was the basis for this entire journey that we're still on right now. And sometimes you just have to think outside the box a little bit, get creative, and go for it. So that's what we did, and kind of happy that we did do it. There's a lot of trepidation leading into it. It's risky.
Yeah, aside from the money, I think one of the things that's really most valuable about crowdfunding campaigns, I don't want to knock them too much, just I would say, our difficulty was we were starting with zero audience, right? Nothing more than what we had friends on Facebook or something. If you have a larger audience to start with, things can be a lot easier. But we definitely walked away with a lot of audience and notoriety. I mean, by the end of this, it obviously had gone viral. I mean, there were entire offices, where everyone at lunch was sitting around a computer, like donating $5 and just cracking up the whole lunch.
Yeah,
I don't think I ever want to hear
friends from 8th grade, reaching out like, I haven't talked to you in 20 years, but I saw your post on Facebook, and this is it's just. My entire office is into this.
Wow.
Like, okay, great.
We can do a mean synchronized thriller dance.
Awesome. We might be doing something creative with our campaign as well. We're doing a Kickstarter through the month of June, and so thanks for the ideas.
Ideas abound.
Absolutely. Awesome. So the people of the Osa Peninsula, they didn't want their home to become another Guanacaste. I'm curious, after making this documentary, do you think that they are sustaining their environment and their culture, and that they'll be able to continue doing that with their sustainable methods?
Well, as it stands now, all signs point towards yes. They are on a much different trajectory than Guanacaste. I would say a couple of the main differences are, as pointed out in the film, the people in Guanacaste and in that region were not educated or capacitated for the tourism boom that was about to hit them, and didn't understand necessarily the risks involved with selling their land. There's a completely different mindset in the Osa as to, land ownership and kind of local empowerment. A lot of that has to do with, local nonprofits and local organizations like the Fundación Neotrópica or Fundación Corcovado that have been working for years and years with the local communities to develop the rural tourism industry in the Osa Peninsula. And there is a keen sense of awareness around maintaining local land ownership and developing tourism projects run by the local communities. I think that's, step one in terms of, being able to conserve your land, your region, your environment, your culture. And the Osa doesn't have any chain hotels. There are no chain restaurants. There's one paved road in the entire region. And people want to keep it that way.
Yeah, that's the magic of the Osa, right? Is that you can get to this place that's so off the grid and magical, and feels like something out of the movie Avatar. It's incredible. And so I think it's the locals are definitely taking things into their own hands, and there's been, as Eytan mentioned, a lot of education on parts of these great nonprofits down there. Quite frankly, that was also part of the motivation for the film, right? It wasn't just to educate travelers like ourselves about what community tourism is and how special this place is, but also for locals who sometimes, when you grow up in a place and it's all normal to you, you don't realize how special it is, right? The fact that 50 scarlet macaws fly over your house every morning and go bananas squawking at each other is, to these local residents, an everyday occurrence. To us, when we go there, we're like, wow, that's amazing, but showing them, how much value we see in it, and other travelers see in it, is really eye-opening to them. They develop a whole nother respect and understanding for their home in seeing people like us, let's say, who are from a developed, wealthy nation, and we're world travelers and all this, but we're coming there to see where they live and experience the food they eat, and the nature that surrounds their home. I think that's really important and special for all the other communities around the world that are dealing with some of these same economic pressures and tourism industry developments.
Yeah. So while the film is regionally specific, it's globally relevant. I think that's a good point to make, that the lessons learned in this film can really be applied anywhere in the world that is facing similar issues.
Yeah, I can see how this has really taken shape in other parts of the world as well, especially when it comes to preserving culture and history and heritage. Instead of having a cute little dance in front of a couple tourists and then walking away, a lot of communities are really starting to engage with travelers and teach them about their culture and teach them about that. And these travelers are so interested to learn that it's become a real tool for the next generation to keep that going and keep that heritage alive. And so I saw a lot of that in your film as well, as trying to keep these cultures and this heritage alive, even though 21st century is creeping in, and a lot of these other cultures are having an influence. But I felt like the Osa had a really good hold on their their identity. So that's great.
Yeah, I would agree that out of a lot of the regions that I have personally visited, for work and pleasure, that that specific part of the world is really advanced in terms of kind of thought process and just desire to maintain their history and their culture and to conserve the amazing environment and biodiversity and wildlife that they have. So definitely.
Yeah, I think one of the most exciting pieces for me of all this is seeing how contagious a good idea can be, right? Even within the Osa, for example, when we went down there, community tourism was starting to take root. We didn't know really that it was called community tourism, that industry existed when we first got down there. We stumbled across a local conference happening at a university down in southern Costa Rica, which really that was our first exposure to it. And some of the towns or areas in the Osa were really pioneering this. But there's a town, for example, called Dos Brazos del Rio Tigre, right? This is a place that we've been to a lot now. That when we started, I feel like I can honestly say there was not a ton going on there in terms of community tourism. We've really watched this town grow into this little micro destination in the middle of the rainforest. Mm-hmm. And they got this going by forming a little cooperative there, right, which operates like a micro tour operator, right? So there's a president and a secretary, and this president speaks English, and he's the one that's online because most of the community members aren't very technologically savvy. A lot of them don't even have a bank account, so this was a way to solve their problem of how did they, deal with money. And this cooperative takes a small commission basically on anything any of the community members are selling. They get to decide how to reinvest that money. And seeing that this community over the last couple years has gone from a very disconnected, very rural community to one that now has a computer that the local kids can get on. They've jerry-rigged kind of cell reception 3G via repeater devices. They just hung in the trees and whatnot, and using their tin roofs, they realize they can get better reception. And in just a few years, I mean, you one computer or one smartphone can change, the next generation's ability to be globally connected.
I think, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, just to add to that, in the last couple months, they've actually also built a community center, and it's changed their ability to host travelers, to host events, and it's really made Dos Brazos a destination within the Osa for bringing people together within the community and visitors. So that's a great example and a really tangible example of how they have used a lot of the funds and being able to invest in something that is going to help them grow even further. But they're being very strategic about how they grow.
And this is a community, mind you, that I think there are roughly 300 residents, and 2 of them were not artisanal gold miners. Those 2 were the 2 teachers in the elementary school, right? So you're talking about really subsistence farming and hardcore, brutal, artisanal mining that it is in itself a little bit destructive to the rainforest. I mean, I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't totally realize is that we think as Westerners or people who haven't been there that these places are completely pristine. And one of the biggest concerns I always hear is, well, you guys are, trying to get people to go there to these pristine places, but like they don't, once people start going there, they're going to get ruined. So how do you feel about that?
Right.
And I think my answer is there's a misconception that everything is okay in these places. There's globalization is hitting them with incredible economic pressures. The OSA, one of the biggest threats to the OSA, has nothing to do with tourism. It's palmatica. It's the African palm oil plants that are destroying rainforests all over the world. I recently learned that Indonesia, for example, is, the islands are considered one of the biggest rainforests in the world. I think it's the second or third largest rainforest in the world. And something like 60 or 70% of that rainforest has been cut down and prepped or planted as African palm oil. The OSA is facing that same problem because these farmers can't figure out how to sustain themselves. Okay. This is an answer for a non-destructive way to use the land, right? To show the land, to take people into it, to show the animals and the biodiversity, as opposed to extracting from the land. To me, it's just such an incredible example of people starting to get into more low impact activities where they're actually benefiting economically, socially, culturally from their land and their home, but in a way that is not extractive and destructive.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely. So yeah, kind of getting into the stories that you pulled. I mean, the stories from each individual's perspective. I loved how you wove that in, and it wasn't just your perspective as travelers visiting for the first or second time. What was it like crossing paths with these people? Were they interested in sharing their story right away, and how did that all come together for you guys?
The process was surprisingly organic and natural, I would say. I think that going into the production process and being on the ground, we weren't exactly sure how we would be received by the local communities and how receptive they would be to us filming them and telling their stories. But what we found is pretty much from day one, every person that we encountered was on board to either refer us to someone that we should talk to either share their story themselves, to tell us about meetings that are happening with miners or the tourism board or this rural tourism, community tourism conference that we went to, or just being resources for what we needed in terms of connecting with the right people on the ground. So at first I would say it was surprising in a very good way that everyone wanted to talk to us and everyone was supportive. And then as the process continued, it just kind of became, we kind of grew into that, and it became kind of a given that we had access. And we felt comfortable, participating in local community events because we were being supported in that way. So, one quick example, Senia, who's one of our main characters, if not the main character in our film, we met her at a miners meeting in a little town called La Palma. They have these monthly meetups where miners come together and talk about their issues, and there's some pro bono lawyers that come to give them advice and consult with them. So we went to this meeting to film and kind of, hear people's stories, and met Senia at that meeting, who then invited us up to her cabin. And that scene in the film was, 3-4 days after that meeting, she's like, come up to the cabin. It's honestly, like, we were just on our way up, had no idea what we were doing. Like, what you saw in the film is exactly what happened. We were just two travelers, with cameras, making a film, hiking up a small river. And then to this day, Senia is one of the closest people to us that one of our best friends in the Osa, and it all started that way. She's much more than a character in the film. She's a friend. Yeah, I can say that applies not just to her, but to a lot of people in the region. That's really a beautiful, outcome aside from finishing the film are the relationships that we built and the connections that we made, and forever, the people in the Osa are going to be, my friends and our friends.
I think most people want to be listened to deep down, right? Even shy people are. I always feel like the easiest way to make a new friend, in a place where no one, is to just make someone feel like they're seen, especially in places where people are completely overlooked, and don't get to feel their value as much. I think that was a huge key for Eytan and myself in getting these stories, was that we were there to listen, and they began to trust that. And as one person trusts you, that spreads very quickly.
And I just to add to that, I think we were very cognizant of not wanting to polarize either side, but to be a unifying voice, and not to be necessarily so, pro-conservation, anti-airport, hardliners, but to be a unifying voice and to empower both sides. And so we approached the project and really, our everyday kind of conduct and interactions with people through that lens. And I think it really was a key part of connecting with the region in such a beautiful way, was having that goal in mind.
You spent a lot of time in the Osa. It was 5 months, correct, while you were filming?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of time. That's wonderful. What were those months like? What was the film process like as you kind of figured out the story and how you were going to put things together?
Go ahead.
It was magical. It was also stressful. We felt a lot of pressure to come away with a really great project. And, given it was our first time making a film, I think we both didn't totally feel comfortable with how much you have to let go of the reins a little bit and just follow your gut in terms of what characters to go after, what stories are working. The place is incredible. I think we both, every time we go there, we lose weight. We eat healthy food, it feels like a simplification of life, where you're not dealing with traffic and weird city stresses. Life is calm. If you get one or two things done in a day, that's like a win in the Osa,
Yeah. I think, from kind of a story perspective or goal perspective, we knew we wanted to make a film about rainforest conservation and raising awareness about the region in that way. But what we weren't so clear on was how. And so throughout the 5 months, kind of like we prefaced earlier in the interview, we learned more and more about community and rural tourism, and really honed in on that angle as a possible solution for conserving this region. So we approached the film and the project as kind of a long form journalistic piece. We were investigators. We were on the ground, listening to people, and kind of carving our own path as to which direction we were going to go in. So that that at times was extremely difficult and confusing because you're getting 7 different opinions or 7 different reactions from 7 different people, and there's just a lot of stuff being said. So it's hard to filter through that sometimes. But with time and with hindsight, with perspective, it became clear that the film was going to really focus on community tourism and rural tourism as the thesis, as the kind of proposed solution, as something that works for both sides. So, and that became clear towards the end of the film, or the end of production process, but also in the editing room. A lot of the nuances and kind of themes were, the way the film was structured was developed in the editing room, and it was really a beautiful organic process to be a part of, that came together, I think, in a way that we hoped it would, but might not have necessarily, or there's no way we would have we knew that it was going to come out this way,
From like a slightly different perspective, also, I think I can also say that this was an absolutely magical adventure. It was so inspiring to be there, regardless of all the pressures of making the film. Every day is an adventure in the Osa. Eytan and I fight over who gets to drive, because it's all 4-wheel drive, like forging rivers and like on dirt roads. I mean, it's like a adult playground, and there's so much interesting culture to connect with there. If you eat a meal at any local's house, it's going to be one of the most delicious things you've ever had, because everything comes from either their backyard or somewhere around the corner, and food just tastes differently, when that's the reality. It was, as hard as we worked, and we worked really, really, really hard, days ended with us getting to like go float in a unknown pond that only 7 locals that live around it know, and there's a ridiculous waterfall there, right? So, I mean,
we played frisbee a lot.
Nice.
We did. There was a beach close to where we were staying, and we'd go during low tide, because the tide there is really crazy. It comes in and pretty much the beach disappears, and then when it goes out, you have like 200 feet of sand. So we'd go during low tide, throw the frisbee around, jump in the ocean. That was a great way to either start the day at like 6:30 or 7, because later than that it's too hot to be out there, or at the very end of the day, like 4:30 or 5, we'd go. And that was a huge highlight when we were able to fit that in. Yeah.
Sounds like a great job. Did this documentary change the way that you travel?
On my end, yes. I mean, I think I can speak for both of us, that it has changed the way we travel pretty drastically. Prior to learning about community and rural tourism, we were always open, or I was always open to, connecting with locals and local experiences in an informal way. And, just given what I want to get out of my travels, I sought that out on my own, without maybe sometimes even knowing that I was seeking it out. But I would, find myself in pretty unique local situations, and connecting with, local cultures. But what we realized through this film and through this process is that there's a much kind of easier way to access those experiences, in a more streamlined way, and that there's a lot of positive impact that you can have with the travel dollars that you're spending. So realizing that not only can we connect with local communities in a much deeper and personal way, but they have also, developed these amazing low impact tourism destinations that your travel dollars are helping support their livelihood and conservation. And so once that became clear to me, I'm not sure I've traveled a ton since then outside of that scope. And I feel really, really blessed to be a part of that community and to just be getting to know more and more, destinations that represent what we're so passionate about.
Excellent.
Yeah, that definitely spoke for me. Yeah, I mean, I think this is how Eytan and I came together on this, right? We were, we went to college together, met freshman year of the dorms, kind of like first week of school. And
we're old friends.
Yeah, we've been old friends for a long time. But there was a time when both of us were living abroad or traveling around the world where we didn't see each other as much. We definitely tracked on what each other were doing because clearly we had similar passions on what excited us about traveling and connecting with other cultures and other places. But yes, certainly identifying and feeling really confident that the way I want to spend my my journeys, my travel, is by really immersing myself and connecting with locals. And one of the things that I do a lot, which this process reinforced, is learning how to cook food from the place I go. This is something I very much try to bring back with me, because I know after being there for a month or 2 months or even longer, I'm going to miss something about that food. So, I mean, Eytan and I cook Costa Rican food now,
Yum.
Yeah, I mean, I message some of our friends in the Osa constantly asking, oh, how do you make the picadillo de papaya and this, like getting their homemade recipes, because I want to share that with people here, or so yeah.
Nice. You mentioned in the documentary that this project inspired local.com. So a new project, a new website that you wanted to create to help travelers have these similar experiences and to help these communities with sustainable tourism. Tell us more about Lokal.
Yeah. So Lokal really is a product of the film. It's a continuation of the film, for all intents and purposes. What the film does is it kind of profiles and outlines some of the community tourism, rural tourism options in the Osa. And after some of our our initial screenings before Lokal existed, we get a lot of people coming up to us and asking us, so how can I go there? How can I, that sounds amazing. That looks amazing. How do I connect with these people? And so at the time that involved, sitting down for coffee for an hour, getting on the phone for an hour, a lot of, time and effort. And what we realized was that there was a real significant opportunity within the travel industry, not just in the Osa, but globally, to connect travelers that are seeking these types of experiences to those destinations. And thus Lokal was born. Lokal is a booking engine, a marketing platform for community tourism around the world. We work with local communities that are already in operation. They have beautiful, guest homes. They've carved trails in their backyard. They've learned how to cook and receive travelers in a way that differs, from maybe some of the traditional or older ways of cooking. They've elevated their level of gastronomy, things like that. But what they're lacking and what we've seen across the board is their ability to kind of market themselves or get travelers there. So that's the opportunity that we saw with Lokal is, being that marketing engine for these communities that have so much to offer, but are struggling to get people to show up.
Initially, we weren't originally going to start a tech company. Again, we're documentary filmmakers, so that wasn't the go-to immediately. But what we realized is that, first of all, there's community tourism in every country around the world. It is a massive space. The reason being that a lot of major NGOs and INGOs around the world, the Peace Corps, USAID, Conservation International, the list goes on and on, have spent millions of dollars over the last 15, 20 years educating and capacitating these local communities because they saw it as a economic development tool for these regions. No one ever thought about how to get travelers there. And the local communities just don't have the tech savvy skills to game TripAdvisor or set up and monitor their own Airbnb page. There's a little more hand-holding that needs to happen for these communities to come online. And as we started, understanding that, we realized that we were really well positioned to help these communities around the world do that, to essentially tell their story and provide a space, not only for that story to live, but for travelers to be able to connect with them and book what they have to offer. It's been a labor of love, just like the film was. We spent a long time trying to crack the nut on how do you work with communities that don't speak English, that don't have a bank account, that aren't online every day, that don't have an email. These are the reasons that you don't find this type of travel on Booking.com or on Airbnb. But we finally were able to solve some of those problems, and now we're in 16 countries, I believe. We're a startup, so we don't have hundreds of experiences in every country or anything, but we do offer a way for travelers to connect to this kind of travel and have really meaningful, culturally immersive adventures.
Wow, that's great. That's so exciting. I'm really excited to see where Lokal goes and how it grows. I'm also interested to know if you guys have any plans for another film. We're going to do another documentary.
Go ahead.
So we actually are planning to do kind of a continuation of the film as a video series, where we would be taking travelers down, starting with potentially influencers, to experience this kind of travel with kind of, especially people who have never done this before. Our goal is to share, have people connect with, someone in the video that feels like them, right? Is this safe to, for me to go on, by myself? Is it comfortable? What does it really feel like? Can I handle the hiking? And really watch, these people in this video series go from people who have never tried this type of travel before to realizing they never want to travel a different way. So we're in the development process of that, but these projects take time. So we plan on kind of releasing a sizzle and more information about this later in the year.
Awesome. That's exciting. Yeah, please keep me updated. I'll keep my eyes open for that. Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for being here today and for answering some questions. And I'm so excited that you're here and that we were able to learn a little bit more about the Osa.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add, by the way, it's localtravel.com, and it's local with a K. So for anyone out there who's interested in taking a look, we have some really cool initiatives. We have an explorers program for people who really want off the beaten path stuff and want to help us onboard communities and give back to those communities by helping them find, ways of selling their experiences. We have a lot of exciting stuff on the site, and we're just trying to build this community and movement of people interested in this type of travel.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
Appreciate it.